What's up, subscribers? Sunjetsu here, and today I'm here with the ever so Arch. What's up, Arch?
I'm good. Thank you for having me again.
No problem at all. Always a pleasure to have people from the Total War community to be on the channel. But I wanted to go ahead and ask you some quick questions. This is not going to be a very long video because I just kind of want to get your reaction to some news we got today. Not really news, but kind of like a slippery reveal that we got on a Total War's Facebook changing their banner to what looks like green, what we've seen with some of the other artwork for Total War Warhammer, but it has some writing on it, and there's a lot of speculation going on the writing itself. And I actually, before I say anything more, I wanted to get your reaction to it. What is your initial reaction to this banner change or this writing?
Well, my initial change is definitely something to do with chaos, obviously enough. And it also does mention the word blood, so I'm hoping blood and gore, but I'm also kind of suspecting Beastmen. I'm kind of hoping Beastmen, because if they just do this as a chaos sub-factions thing, like for example they can ask us to pay $20 for a reskin to make them into corn chaos or something, I'd be sad.
That would, I think all of us would be sad. I think that's terrible. That sounds awful. Not. I'm hoping that because I'm actually a fan of dividing up chaos and giving it its own branches or whatever. I don't like it how it's all unified. I want it to be more distinct, but that could come later. I feel like the Beastmen are something that should come now, as well as some other things. Now, when it comes to Wood Elves, do you see any Wood Elves in this sneak peek, I guess you would call it?
Well, that depends. If it's Beastmen, it has to be Wood Elves. You can't do one or the other. Beastmen and Wood Elves are arch enemies, and always have been, so if we're gonna get one, I'm almost certain we'll get the other.
Okay, so you're thinking that it's gonna be both of them. So, two major factions in one go. Now, I've had this conversation because there's a rumor going around that there's a mini campaign, a Bretonnia mini campaign that might come out. Nothing hard at all said, but just kind of speculation. What are your thoughts on a mini campaign focused around the Woods of Ethelloren and Bretonnia and all that?
It could be interesting. With Bretonnia, I would almost perhaps also then start suspecting that they might be adding in, assuming it's some kind of mini campaign or whatever with Bretonnia, perhaps they could do a small one against the Beastmen, where they ally with the Wood Elves eventually. Or maybe they could even throw in a new undead hero, because the undead Heinrich Kemmler is supposed to have a buddy going along with him, Krell, an undead chaos champion, who just happens to use a massive axe, and reanimated by dark magic, and in service of chaos, which would be interesting considering the Facebook thing we've gotten includes the word, which appears to be axe, blood, and dark magic. So Krell would be interesting.
Krell, axe, blood, and dark magic. Another thing that has been speculated is, or has been, I guess, said. I can't find anywhere that it's said, but people are telling me on videos and just on the forum as well that it has been said that if they do a mini campaign, those factions for that mini campaign would be also put in a grand campaign, and that would be amazing. That because I'm not a very big fan of the miniature campaigns. I never really was. I buy them just to try them, but there's only a few that I actually really got into. But the being able to play them also on the major campaign, the grand campaign, how do you see that working out? I mean, I know we have that whole area blotched out. Kind of, you can't go into there, those woods in Bretonnia. How do you see them playing if they add Wood Elves and Beastmen there on the Grand Campaign?
Well, the Wood Elves would probably be relatively simple. Just, plant them inside the forest, and that would pretty much be it. The Beastmen, now that's a bit of an oddity, because it's kind of impossible to tell what Creative Assembly is going to do with them, because they have a strange thing. Like, they put a lot of work into Chaos, for example. Chaos turned out to be a pretty good faction. And they didn't do a single damn shit with Dwarven Carracks, which I would have considered far more likely for them to do. So, Beastmen are kind of in the same boat, because Beastmen technically inhabit pretty much every single forest in the old world, which obviously would make them somewhat problematic as a species to be played by the player. So I'm maybe even just suspecting that they'll just divide the forest of Athalor into two, like half of it's beastmen, half of it's wood elves or something.
Do you think that the like how do you see them playing? I know the from what I read, I could be wrong, but from what I read, the wood elves don't expand in the traditional sense. They don't take over cities or really move out of those woods. The beastmen attack and raid. What are like what? How would you see the gameplay with both of those? Like how would you see them? How would you see that?
Well, the beastmen I would probably call a chaos faction, like the classical one we already have. They shouldn't really be able to keep settlements, because that's not in their nature. Honestly, I could see chaos factions holding settlements simply as a form of forward operating base or something. But beastmen should not be able to hold any sort of settlements. It's just not in their nature. A settlement is order, and order is what they hate most of all, so they wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't see any of them holding them down. Now the wood elves, I feel like the beastmen are a little bit easier to. I mean, you said that they're in every forest, but if Creative Assembly kind of for the player kind of narrows it down, maybe to like that forest or maybe like a couple areas around the map, but not even then, just maybe like that forest, it'd be a little bit simpler. But with the wood elves not being able to conquer, but having them hold land in the forest, like how would you have them play if you had them play like that?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because we kind of come back to the whole regional occupation thing. The Wood Elves, if they have to abide by regional occupation, would probably only be able to claim Bretonnian lands or human lands. Even then, it's not lore accurate, but I'd have a far easier time justifying the Wood Elves expanding out into the rest of the world than something like the Empire not being able to control the Dwarven Karak, for example, because the Wood Elves could simply just see the end times coming. They could go like, oh shit, the world is ending, right? The only way we can protect the forest is by expanding the forest, and therefore they'll start expanding the forest. Hopefully, you'll be able to see that on the map with their own cultural influence. Like, if they take over 100% cultural influence in this area, it should be covered in forest.
That is interesting. I didn't even think about that. So the some sort of forest animation, like corruption.
Pretty much.
That good thing I'm talking to you. I never thought of that. Okay, so corruption goes around them while they're not corrupt. Well, I guess what else corrupt, whatever you might call it. That's cool. Okay, so I'm getting into like some of my finishing thoughts here now with the Wood Elves and the Beastmen. I'm not very familiar on how they fight at all. I know, well, I'm more with the Beastmen because I found them very intriguing. Wood Elves, for me, elves are kind of a dime a dozen when it comes to fantasy, but Beastmen are very, very interesting. And I've seen a little bit how they go. I play Call of Warhammer, so I've seen a little bit how they behave. But are they, when it comes to fighting, and when it comes to fighting Empire factions and Bretonnian factions, I think there's Dwarf settlement right there too, and the Greenskins to the south. Are they, and the Vampires actually are there too. Are they competitive? Like, how competitive are they compared to the other armies?
Oh, the poor little beastmen haven't been competitive in tabletop for a very, very long time.
I was thinking that, actually.
They don't really have the means to deal with heavy cavalry. Their gimmick is that they have the ability to ambush enemies, so they can send certain troops around the rear of the enemy army, which is something I do hope to see in Total War, but the problem with that is that anyone who's played against Beastmen once is going to know this is going to happen, and is going to have countermeasures ready. Which usually gimps the Beastmen rather horribly. They've got very good melee stats, but they have very little armor, which means they're extremely vulnerable to projectile weapons and to being flanked by heavy cavalry, etc. So they would probably need to be a very heavily focused melee faction with some kind of mobility bonuses, like being able to deploy from various table edges, or all of them having skirmisher special rule.
Do they have magic?
Yes, they do, but not particularly effective magic to make up for their weaknesses. They've got very little in the way of mobility magic, which is what they really would need. It's mostly buffs and stuff.
Okay. Do they have what lord would you see taking them forward? or
Ah,
legendary lord?
legendary lord for the Beastmen. See, that's a bit of an problematic question. Because the one I would most like to see would probably not work, or if they did him, they couldn't do him justice. Um, what was your name again? He has a creepy little name. He's essentially chaos made manifest in beastman form. He's overly blessed. He has a nasty habit of corrupting everything he touches, which means that
That'd be
if
pretty
he
cool.
so much as touches you, you'll be turned into a chaos spawn.
Ooh. Does he what does he look like?
Um, like a mess of branches and corrupted flesh, essentially.
That's pretty epic. With the Wood Elves, are they competitive?
Ah, Morgor. That was his name, yes.
Morgor.
I kept wanting to say Mordor, but I knew that was wrong, so.
Okay, so Morgor, that would be the legendary lord for the Beastmen. If you were kind of looking at it now, the Wood Elves, are they competitive in fighting?
Very much so.
Oh, okay.
Because in the current version of Total War Warhammer, ranged units are massively overpowered.
So they have a lot of range units. I would assume bows and all that.
Yes, it would be essentially, in Total War terms, it would be an incredibly good army because you have massive amounts of very powerful, very long range longbows with really good shock cavalry.
Oh, they have shock cavalry too. Okay, and
Yep.
and I know for a fact that they have very powerful magic. But I heard that they get the most of their power from the woods. That's kind of why, or I read actually, that's kind of why they stick there. Is that true or?
Yes, you could think of the Forest of Athlorn like a living being, living in a symbiotic relationship with the Wood Elves, so one cannot really exist without the other.
Okay, and that's where they derive their magic from, or is that?
Yeah, and also their allies, the various woodkin, like the Dryads and the Tree Men.
Okay, so all right, so the Wood Elves would be more of a threat when it came against the Empire and Bretonnian and all the factions that are in the area. The Beastmen would be more of a nuisance, kind of a nuisance faction.
They'd be hard to balance, because they have some elite units that are absolute melee monsters, but they have some real mobility problems.
All right, so the Beastmen, in order to be more effective, you would say, um, give them those elite units, give them those elite melee units, make them more of a rush army, and if they have well, when they get the magic, or if they have magic or a magic unit, um, he should buff their speed or their maybe their armor in order to take projectiles a little bit better, stuff like that, to kind of help out their weaknesses when it comes to the other factions.
Yeah, that would be handy.
Okay. Okay, well, those are all the questions I have for today. Do you have any other last things to say about this not confirmed but very speculated upon faction release?
Well, I hope it's going to be Wood Elves and Beastmen, because those are very interesting factions, and it might just be Blood and Gore, but, maybe it'll be all three, which would be nice, but unlikely.
And hopefully, I'm hoping that around that time period, maybe they'll go ahead and release Bretonia and some of the Bretonian factions officially, and then add more units to them and get Blood DLC going here. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Arch.
Happy to be here.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think. I know you guys been blowing up the last video that I made talking about this subject. Well, here we have a little bit more insight. You guys know that I'm still a novice when it comes to Warhammer. I still have to ask a lot of questions. There's no other person that would ask questions other than Arch Warhammer. From my opinion, he knows it all. Go ahead and check out his channel. It's going to be in a link in the description below. Go ahead and check him out. He does a lot of Warhammer style videos from different Warhammer games, Warhammer 40k, Total War Warhammer. Go ahead and check him out. Great guy, great commentator. So go ahead and check his channel out. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Again, let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. Let's see if we get over 50 likes for this being a DLC with the Beastmen and Wood Elves coming soon. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Become a subscriber today. day if you haven't done so already to not miss a video. And as always, guys, this is gonna be Sunjetsu signing off. I wanted to get your reaction to it. What is your initial reaction to this banner change or this writing?
Well, my initial change is definitely something to do with chaos, obviously enough. And it also does mention the word blood, so I'm hoping blood and gore, but I'm also kind of suspecting Beastmen. I'm kind of hoping Beastmen, because if they
a very long video, because I just kind of want to get your reaction to some news we got today. Not really news, but kind of like a slippery reveal that we got on a Total War's Facebook, changing their banner to what looks like green, what we've seen with some of the other artwork for Total War Warhammer, but it has some writing on it, and there's a lot of speculation going on the writing itself. And I actually, before I say anything more,
just do this as a Chaos sub-factions thing. Like, for example, they can ask us to pay $20 for a reskin to make them into Corn Chaos or something. I'd be sad.
That would, I think all of us would be sad. I think that's terrible. That sounds awful. Not. I'm hoping that, because I'm actually a fan of dividing up Chaos and giving it its own branches or whatever. I don't like it how it's all unified. What's up, subscribers? Sunjetsu here, and today I'm here with the ever so Arch. What's up, Arch?
I'm good. Thank you for having me again.
No problem at all. Always a pleasure to have people from the Total War community to be on the channel. But I wanted to go ahead and ask you some quick questions. This is not going to be more distinct, but that could come later. I feel like the Beastmen are something that should come now, as well as some other things. Now, when it comes to Wood Elves, do you see any Wood Elves in this sneak peek, I guess you would call it?
Well, that depends. If it's Beastmen, it has to be Wood Elves. You can't do one or the other. Beastmen and Wood Elves are arch enemies, and always have been, so if we're gonna get one, I'm almost